System has blood flow and has blood supply as well as nerve supply, just like any other organ and any other organ system in our body. And so, our nervous input into our gastrointestinal system and our alimentary canal can be broken down into a couple of different parts. So we have our myenteric plexus, which is sometimes called Auerbach's plexus. This is a plexus of nerves that exists in our muscularis externa layer, and these nerves stimulate this muscularis externa, this muscle, to control gastric motility. So how vigorously and how often our gastrointestinal muscle is actually contracting to aid in gastric motility. We also have one called a submucosal plexus, which is also known as Meissner's plexus of nerves. It's located, given its name, it's located in the submucosa of our alimentary canal, and it isn't going to control gastric motility, but rather gastric acid secretion. So how many secretions are coming from these different glands and these different cells that we'll talk about later. So that's a little of our nervous supply. We also have a blood supply to our gastrointestinal system. So largely we have our aorta, and then off of our abdominal aorta we will have three main branches. So we have a celiac trunk, we have a superior mesenteric artery, and then an inferior mesenteric artery. Now each of these, the order that I discussed them, celiac trunk, superior mesenteric, and inferior mesenteric, this is in descending order off of the abdominal aorta, and each one of those branches will supply a division of our gut. So the celiac trunk will supply what we'll call the foregut, the superior mesenteric artery will supply the midgut, and the inferior mesenteric artery will supply the hindgut. Okay, so this is all arterial blood supply. Well, we actually have to drain blood from our alimentary canal, just as we do with any other organ or organ system. So we do that through something called the hepatic portal system. And so this is it's a unique system in that it contains very nutrient-rich blood that is going to the liver, and it's taking the blood actually into the liver. So the liver is unique because it receives blood from two different locations. It receives blood from an artery and it receives blood from a vein. Generally we think of an organ receiving blood by an artery and it having blood drained away via a vein. But the liver is unique because it actually receives blood from both an artery and a vein. Now this hepatic portal system, I'll show you a picture in this next slide. And so on the left here you can see our abdominal aorta with our three branches. So we see a celiac trunk here with its three main divisions, left gastric, splenic, and common hepatic. We then see a superior mesenteric artery, and then we see an inferior mesenteric artery as well. So you can see how they branch in descending order as we discussed. And then on the right, we see a schematic of our hepatic portal system, or our hepatic portal circulation. So what this hepatic portal circulation is in this hepatic portal system, it's a network of blood vessels that begins with capillaries and it ends with capillaries. That's how you define a portal system. So what's happening is as we absorb, so we ingest food, we digest it, and then we absorb it. Where it's absorbed is into our blood, and it's absorbed into this hepatic portal system. So you see blood coming out here, and it's entering, and it's ultimately going to travel to this hepatic portal vein. And so the hepatic portal vein is really a fusion of primarily your splenic vein as well as your inferior mesenteric vein. And when these two join, they form the hepatic portal vein that brings nutrient-rich blood into the liver. Now, you can bring up and discuss the hepatic portal system in terms of, or rather, when you have problems with it. And so, anytime you have something that is increasing the pressure within your liver and altering hepatic circulation, instead of blood flowing into the liver, you can have it flowing back, okay, backwards, retrograde. And so what it'll do is it will flow back to these points where some blood enters the hepatic portal system and some blood enters what we'll call the caval system, so going into the vena cava, the inferior vena cava. And places where these meet, you call them an anastomosis. So it's a venous anastomosis where blood going into the caval system and blood going into the hepatic portal system meet. And where they meet, these areas can become engorged with blood during times where hepatic circulation is altered. So you generally have them around the anus, and you refer to them as hemorrhoids. You can have them around the umbilicus, or where your belly button is essentially, and you can have it referred to as something called caput medusa. And then you can have ones around the distal end of your esophagus, and you can get something called esophageal varices. Now, of these three, the esophageal varices are generally considered the most dangerous, and it's because these dilated esophageal veins, they can rupture rather easily under high pressure, and when they rupture, they bleed a lot. So you can have a patient develop esophageal varices, and your number one concern will be hemorrhage. So you want to try to prevent hemorrhage and look for signs and symptoms of them bleeding internally. And you can go as far as to have a procedure done in which a balloon, it's called a balloon tamponade, and it will be inserted into the esophagus and expanded. And when it expands, it puts pressure on those veins to hopefully prevent them from bursting, and then ultimately hopefully prevent them from bleeding. So we'll take a look at some of the functional anatomy of our digestive system. So we start in the mouth and the oral cavity, and we have different structures. So we have lips, we have our cheek, palate, our tongue. We have a hard and soft palate. Our lips and cheek help to keep food pressed between our teeth when chewing. Our tongue actually does a lot of different things. As we'll see, it aids in mechanical digestion, so moving food and manipulating it around. It helps to also provide some enzymes, so something called lingual lipase, which we'll see actually breaks down fats and lipids in the mouth. It also aids in that. So it really has a couple of different functions. We have our oral orifice, which is just generally the opening in between our upper and lower lips. And then we have our palate, which consists of a hard palate or bony palate, which consists of the maxilla and palatine bones. And then we have a soft palate, which has our skeletal muscle and our uvula. So we'll take a look at some of those in just a few slides. The tongue I mentioned, it helps to do a couple of different things. It helps to manipulate food for mechanical digestion, but it also provides some enzymes that help to chemically and enzymatically break down food as well. Within our tongue, in the next slide we'll be able to see it a little bit easier, are these small little bumps known as papillae. And within these papillae, at least in most of them, there are taste buds. And so all of them except this filiform, so this first one that we hear, all of these, fungiform, circumvallate, and folate, they all contain taste buds except for our filiform. Okay, so we'll take a look at that. And then we have different tongue muscles. So we have muscles actually within our tongue itself, which we'll call intrinsic tongue muscles. And then we have extrinsic tongue muscles, and they all end in the suffix glossus. So there's hyloglossus and genioglossus, styloglossus, palatoglossus, and they all act to move and manipulate the tongue for different activities such as speaking and in what we're discussing with digestion. So here you can see your tongue. You can see these different papillae on the surface. So you can see some foliate papillae out here. You can see vallate. You can see some fungiform as well. You can see them on a more close-up transverse section here. So you can see that they're very different in form. And these filiform papillae, these are the ones that do not contain any taste buds. and they're thought to help to keep food on the tongue and provide some more friction, but they don't actually contain any taste buds like our other ones do. So also in our mouth we have some associated salivary glands that secrete saliva. So we have different glands. We have a parotid gland, we have a submandibular gland, and we have a sublingual. Submandibular, hopefully you understand that this is underneath the mandible. It's submandibular. And then likewise, the sublingual is sub or underneath the lingua, which is referring to the tongue. Now, the parotid gland is really the one that isn't named super descriptively like these other two, but it's going to be located along the lateral aspect of your cheek, kind of a little bit posteriorly, kind of where the ramus of your mandible is located. All of these glands will provide saliva through salivary secretions whenever they're innervated by parasympathetic nerves. And then one particular enzyme that is contained within this saliva is something called salivary amylase. And so you know it's an enzyme because it ends in the suffix ase. And what salivary amylase is it's an enzyme present in our saliva that breaks down carbohydrates, essentially, so polysaccharides, into smaller chains of glucose. And then we'll have further breakdown of this in the stomach and small intestine via pancreatic enzymes as well. So here on the left we see our parotid gland, and then on the right we can see our submandibular gland and sublingual gland. You don't need to pay attention to all of this circuitry back here. This is just showing the pathway of innervation. So this is a trigeminal nerve with its 3 divisions, how you innervate the lacrimal gland and things like that. So you don't really have to worry about this as much, but just understand that these different glands are located in these different relative positions within our oral cavity. So also within our mouth we have our teeth, and so now we have different teeth that are within our mandible, and we have different teeth in our maxilla, so sometimes we can call them maxillary teeth or mandibular teeth. They're surrounded by our gums or the gingiva, and then kind of anchored by a periodontal ligament. Now, the distribution of teeth within our oral cavity can be denoted as this picture here. It's kind of blurry, I apologize, but it's ICPM. And so what this means is incisors, canines, premolars, and molars. Now it is for one quadrant of the mouth. So if you think about your upper left side of your mouth and then the lower left side of your mouth, the upper left side would be this top row, and the lower left side would be this bottom row, in terms of how many are present. Now, we have here, you can see your maxilla, and you can see the teeth associated with your maxilla, and then you can see your mandible down here, and you can see those teeth that are associated with your mandible. You can see the same thing here, but from a lateral view, you see all of your, at least half of your maxillary teeth, and then down here you can see roughly half of your mandibular teeth down here. So here's a cross section of a tooth, and so you can see the portion that is sticking above the gums that you can actually see. This is all the crown, and then everything below that is the root. So that's how you can divide it very broadly, is into the crown, which you can see, and the root, which you cannot see. That's further embedded within bone, so either in the maxilla or the mandible. You can then see a few other things. So the enamel is this hard portion. Now, enamel is extremely hard. It's extremely dense and firm due to different calcium compounds. Hydroxyapatite crystals is really what's in it. And this is an extremely hard substance that serves to protect this outer lining of our tooth. Just deep to that, we have something called the dentin here. We see a pulp, this middle, more interior portion. We see a cementum, which kind of helps anchor this down, as well as this periodontal ligament as well. And then this kind of pink tissue here you can see is all of your gingiva or your gums. So you've heard of possibly gingivitis. Gingivitis is the inflammation of this gingiva. Now, you can have your enamel. So this enamel, hopefully you notice that you don't see any blood vessels up here. So there's no blood supply to the enamel. So it's avascular. And what this kind of results in is that when you have the destruction of it, or you have it broken down, it's not going to renew itself. It's not going to build back up on its own. And so you can have things known as dental caries, which are just commonly referred to as cavities, is when you have the mineralization of the enamel is not consistent with the rate of demineralization. So this can happen due to different, if there's bacteria there, and then those bacteria secrete enzymes, and then those enzymes can ultimately kind of lead to the demineralization of the enamel. You can have other conditions related with your mouth as well. Something called xerostomia, which refers to dry mouth, and it can be caused by bacteria as well. So we'll take a break here.